Um, Good morning. My name is Richard Jones, and this is a Second Starts presentation of Richard Jones RN. And I want to quickly talk about what the title of this presentation was. The title of the presentation was about what substance use and behavioral disorder practitioners are getting wrong. And I want to make sure that we're not here to tell you what you're doing procedural wrong. We're just really trying to give a different insight. And I think it's a nursing driven insight. And I explained to you why I think it's that and who I am, and we'll get right to it. First of all, my name is Richard Jones, RN, semi-retired RN who has been around for a little while. We'll get to myself later. But basically what I myself and Second Starts does is we help the complete family and support network of young adults in the recovery process. And we help them to install what we call a self-refueling transformation. And this is basically using the tools that you practitioners already deliver. And I want to explain why. So it's not what you're doing wrong, but I want to tweak the insight of how you look at what you do. And I think I have a nurse-driven way to help you with that. It's a totally non-clinical application. Even though I am an RN, this is a non-clinical application, and I came up with it as a way to help fuel and bolster what you practitioners already do. So we're trying to help. And our main goal is just to reduce the occurrence and relapse rates of compromised young adults with substance use and behavioral disorders. So that is the premise of how we're going to look at this. So the direction I want to look at and what we try to specialize on is young adults between the ages of 17 and 24. And they're in recovery a lot of times from addiction, behavioral disorders, post or pre-incarceration situations, and we want to find a way to help them to absorb and make better use of the treatment that practitioners are given. So this is basically something that we do to aid and strengthen what you frontline practitioners are doing. That'll be a recurring theme that I want to talk about the entire time. What are the frontline practitioners doing, and how can we help? Oh, excuse me, it's always going to be something. So I want to put this in the vein of something I call, or we as Second Starts call, leverage-based tapered life management. And is an organic recovery system, and we'll get more into that, and initiated by frontline practitioners and behavioral disorder practitioners. And it is done basically by consult or referral to us. And this is a system that we can work with families directly, or we can just provide the information for them to work with. That's the main goal, is to get this information out on this view. And we think we can bolster the effectiveness of the treatments that we are offering. So we talked about the ages that we're talking about mostly are between 17 and 24 years old. That's usually what we like to talk to. I want to welcome the people that are invited here. We have people that we're going to definitely get the replay to, and we have people that we're going to get this out in their mailboxes. They've requested it. Physicians, physicians assistants, nurse practitioners, therapists, social service professionals, even some clergy that's going to be involved in this. This is all the people that would run into and help and assist the families of this demographic that we're talking about. And it's a non-clinical nursing view to help assist in the recovery of these individuals. That's important, non-clinical. Even though I'm a registered nurse, I truly believe that practitioners have the best training, the best methods, and this is exactly what we need to do. Is we need to make what you do stronger and more effective. And that is the whole premise of what we're doing. I want to start off a little bit by telling you about myself. And the reason why this came about is because I was beginning to experience what most practitioners experience, compassion fatigue, in working with these individuals. And I knew that if it wasn't just me and talking to other practitioners, we go into the helping these individuals and families. And after you've been doing it for a little while, it's almost impossible not to feel a fatigue because you start off most of the time ice skating uphill. And too many times with that, it does start to take a toll. And I, in my previous life as a correctional director of nurses, and now working in substitute, which I learned at the time when I became a correctional nurse that it was a majority of it was working with substance abuse disorders, especially in that demographic. I say my name is Richard Jones. I'm an RN. I've been an RN for over 35 years, starting in the fields of long-term care, and then I moved to corrections and substance abuse. I call myself the accidental nurse all the time because I got into nursing. My grandmother and my mother were nurses as I was coming up, and I couldn't have told you what they did. I knew that they took people's temperatures. I never paid attention. I just knew they were nurses. It didn't mean anything to me. I went into the military and spent my time in there working in signal intelligence. After I discharged, I decided that I was going to come back, get my education, and I was going to go into a field that one of my cousins had went into, and he was actually a glass blower. I was going to learn how to do that, learn the trade with him, and that's what we're going to do. The college that I went to had a industrial glass blowing program, and I was registered to go, and right before the semester started, they decreased the funding for non-industrial participants, and I was forced out with a paid semester and nothing to do, just a paid semester. I had about less than 2 weeks to make a decision, and my mother said, "Why don't you consider nursing?" And I looked at her like she was crazy, like nursing. Wow, I can't be a nurse. I don't even know anything. What? I don't even want. No. The clock was ticking. My grandmother chimed in, said you should try it. I didn't have much else to do. I'd paid for the semester. It was either that or pull out. I didn't want to do any of that social worker, business major, any of that kind of stuff. So I went on and joined the program. 35 years later, I'm in semi-retirement and trying to get a message out about how I feel about working with this demographic. It started out in long-term care for me. And at about 15 years into my long-term care, I was approached to come work at the correctional facility. Again, accidental. I didn't even know there were nurses in the correctional facility. Never thought about it. Never considered it. It never occurred to me. I went and had some interviews. It was a very small shop. I was asked to be the director of nurses. I had no experience. I went in and totally trained by a fine group of LPNs who taught me about how to work in corrections. I soon learned that the corrections field was extremely varied, no predicting what type of situations you might run into, but a particular area of it intrigued me. And one of the areas that intrigued me is the reason why I have this message now, because I was very struck by the fact that there were so many, especially young people with great potential that were basically thrown away by the time they got there. And it was not because of the reasons I would have thought, and a lot of people still do think. They think that the system is failing them. As someone who was part of the system, working with the practitioners that went in to help, the social workers, the therapists that came in to help, the people that did provided care outside, physicians, They were all extremely professional and did a good job, but they were facing an enemy that was working totally against them. So at that time, I really wanted to understand why was this happening and what could I do? And I got into a situation where I really began to study it and do some interviews and think about what was going on, what I was looking at, what I was seeing, and what was anything that we could do about it. It was a very difficult problem because I didn't this what I thought the answer was really wasn't something that was studied. So I went into it with a little different attitude, and I came up with some ideas. And these ideas basically came from my interviews. I became very fascinated with first, second time offenders. I became very fascinated with their attitudes when they first were arrested versus their attitudes after they had been there a few times, because a lot of times this is a repeat cycle. And I understood that the fear, the anxiety, the frustration, the embarrassment that they felt on arrest one or two really began to quickly fade away. I began to receive calls and make calls to family members or people that were interested in these individuals. And most of the time was close family members. And I asked a million questions. And a lot of times, and I didn't even know if this was appropriate in my situation as director of nurses at the jail, but I would take their names down and ask them, could I get back in touch with them? And could I speak with them during this individual's incarceration? And could I speak with them and start to learn about some of the things and backgrounds that they were going through? And I learned some things that weren't necessarily being taught or talked about in our circles between the nursing, the practitioners. I learned some things that I thought could be very interesting. One of the things I learned was that the practitioners, even though they were on an uphill battle, they were doing enough. They were doing enough to get this job done. They were doing enough to get much better results than we were getting. So where were we failing? I looked at the family members and support people. They had a lot of love for these individuals, and they were trying and they were doing the best they could. I still thought that our rates of success were way under what they should be, considering the potential that these young people had. So I began to develop in my mind and try to put up together something that would help to bolster our efforts. I knew that there was impossible to come up with any type of system that would make it all better all the time. We've been working for that for hundreds of years. We couldn't just make it better. But what could we do to increase our odds? What could we do to make it better and stronger and get more utilization? So I learned this, and this story, part of what I'm telling you, is what I call the Sally Port story. Sally Port is a part of the jail that separates the outside from the inside. It's a small room, usually with tables and chairs, where we would go and talk to inmates and do questions, medical questioning, listen to complaints, place for attorneys to speak with their clients. A small room with tables in. And this is where I would routinely go and see, and I made it my business as director of nurses to see all of the young adults, first and second time offenders, and interview them and talk to them and get a bearing on where they were at, what potential they had for handling incarceration, and really trying to get a beat on what we could do for them and make sure that this incarceration, no matter how long or short it would be, could be quote unquote successful, meaning no problems, no major issues, which would then strengthen the whole entire environment for all the prisoners. And I found out that the fear and the level of frustration that I watched in their faces, I watched the variation, and I started to really come up with, and this is where I came up with this the way that we would start to approach this and see if I could help practitioners. And I found that very important. I found out that we needed to do 3 different things. And it was very important, as I researched this, very important that these 3 things were done at the same time, simultaneously. I thought that was one of the biggest problems that we were having in treatment, was we were doing the right things, but we weren't grouping them together the proper way. And I think this is extremely important. If I don't make too many other points in this presentation, I want to make this point. We need to do 3 things simultaneously, and we need to initiate them as soon as possible. I would prefer prevention, but prevention is very difficult because, well, in our society, prevention is difficult. And I understood that it had to be customized. In other words, in order for us to reach any individual, we had to understand their perspective and their point of view, which is very difficult because most of the time as practitioners, you learn a particular method, you hone that method, and you understand you're working with individuals, but there is a set course and a set method. Try to elicit a set of responses, a set direction. So these 3 things had to be done simultaneously. And really what those 3 things were what I call, typos, of course, therapeutic comprehension. We had to work with the support network, and we had to create a client transformation. These things had to be done simultaneously. Therapeutic comprehension, and in my eyes, was helping the practitioner network manage distraction and increase absorption of the teaching, the training, the counseling. Manage the distraction that would reduce the absorption of this. The right things were getting given, the right information was given, but we got less and less absorption, and less absorption with each incarceration or each meeting, okay? And this didn't seem to make a difference whether it was strictly behavioral, whether it was related to an addiction situation, okay? And when I use an addiction situation in this incarceration situation, I mean that it doesn't necessarily have to be to the level where we need to put them in rehab. A lot of times we don't trigger our systems until the person reaches that type of level. But it is important that we understand that any substance abuse use or any distractions can cause the domino effect that ends up in a person having a failed lifetime. So we didn't necessarily look at, or I didn't necessarily look at substance abuse as something that had to be strung out and needed rehab, any substance abuse. And I found out that the link between early incarceration and substance abuse of many kinds was almost inseparable. Number 2, we needed to work with the support network. We needed to find a way to reimagine what the support network was, who it was made of, how it was built. Okay, how do we grow a support network? Because the support network was by far, almost before treatment, the strongest link we had toward a long-term recovery. How do we deal with and manage the support network? That is where pretty much most of the influence of change came from. And it was positive and or negative. And the positiveness or negativity didn't necessarily rest on who the person was. And sometimes the stronger the support, the more the negativity, because we had to find a way to deal with the guilt and shame aspect. And lastly, client transformation. The most important thing I noticed, and this is a nursing function I want to add on to the practitioners, is that most practitioner care, by its very nature, cannot be immediate. Teaching, counseling, therapy in many ways, social services assistance of the clergy. It's hard to make a complete transformation. A lot of times in that situation, when you're talking to a person on their first or second offense, it is assumed because of their reactions to your help that complete transformation has been sought, has been attained. But nothing could be further from the truth. It's very difficult to attain complete transformation in any situation, in that long-term situation. We find many inmates grasping on to situations and qualities that they never would have before while they're there. But that is not enough indoctrination to deal with the gravity that they face on the other side. So we realized that even though we couldn't afford cure or permanent change, what we did have complete control of was that 180-degree turn and switch to setting their eyesight in a different direction. The key was, what did we do and what could we do with that after we did that? So we want to go back to therapeutic comprehension. It's very important to introduce this as soon as we can in treatment, as soon as we can. We want to focus on treatment absorption and managing distractions. And what we want to do is we want to install a life management system and attach real values, real customized values to that, okay? And the whole goal is to boost and bolster the efforts of everyone in the recovery team. And we want to do that at initiation. This is why I call this a system that should be initiated by frontline practitioners. And when I try to get referrals from frontline practitioners, what I want to let them know is this one move that we do that can strengthen the entire effort of all three phases of this long-term recovery process. What the practitioners do, okay? What the support network can do, and lastly, and most importantly, the effect on the individual as a long-term therapy. With the support network, and we call that enhancement, because what we needed to do was we need to reevaluate who was involved in the support network. Not to remove anyone out, but what additions can we make, and how can we present the problem in a slightly different way? And again, this is a non-clinical effort, so there is no reason, I find no reason at all for the practitioners, the frontline practitioners, all of you that are involved, to change anything that you're doing. I think this is just a way to glue it together better. We want to customize that network to the individual, okay? We want to leverage the power and influence that network has. And how can we use that now to potentiate all the treatment that is being given by the practitioners? Most very important. And the most important thing, the guilt and shame component of the support network. The guilt and shame component of the support network, in all my phone interviews, I found out that it didn't matter how close the individual was. It didn't matter what their position. Sometimes the closer, sometimes the position caused a guilt and shame aspect that was a negative toward maintaining our focus. And that was extremely important. It was a negative that maintained our focus. And what we needed to do was take that network, reimagine what the components are, rebuild it in a way that the information that is given to them is separate than the information of teaching, separate than the information of counseling. It needed to be the information of support. And that information went both ways, okay? It had to be an interactive system that allowed the client to feel that the support network was interested in their forward movement, production, not dwelling on their failure or their past. So how could we do that? How could we create an interactive system that went back and forth to where now the support network does not deal or have to deal with the information of the past, the information of failure, the information about their addictions? A lot of times that increased the guilt and shame component. Is it continually necessary from practitioners to deliver that information? Yes, in your environment, but it should be maintained in that environment. The overall focus should be a focus of forward action and forward movement. And teaching and counseling that dealt with the actual addiction, the actual crime, the actual, downfall, we might say, of the person, that needed to be separated. We need to separate those. And therefore, we can bolster a system now that creates forward movement. And we can now start to open up the channels and create absorption for the individual. And I found that was extremely important. What we called working with the client and a self-refueling transformations. Of course, we wanted to leverage the power of personal agency and ownership. And this had to be a power that mutated from agency to ownership to a sense of general agency. And that's what really helps to cause the transformation, okay? We wanted to create a perpetual organic recovery system. And what this had a lot to do with is creating a system that allowed them to continue to grow and had an endless possibilities of growth and provided the fertile environment for growth, okay? And we also wanted to focus on post-program preparation because in the individuals that we're talking to, the difference between the gravity of real life and the gravity of the training situations and teaching situations cannot be overestimated. It cannot be overestimated. It is something that is extremely important to understand and to know. Now, one of the most important things that and problems that I wanted to express to the practitioners were that you are one of the reasons why we are behind in that battle in this demographic is because we don't understand some crucial things. And let me go back to the slide because I want to really talk about what we call the leverage-based tapered life management system. The main component of the leverage-based tapered life management system is this. Attention is gold. Attention is the new gold. I stole this line from a young entrepreneur on the internet named Alex Hormozy, but he is absolutely true. The reason why we have so much trouble is because good information, good teaching is secondary. I want to repeat this. It is secondary to attaining an individual's attention. One of the reasons why we have so much trouble is because corporate America and the quote unquote forces, and you fill in however you feel about that are looking to cause downfall, looking to gain attention, looking to sell product, looking to manipulate. They focus on gaining attention, and they are very good at it. And they leave trails on how they do that. Leverage-based tapered life management system looks to use those same tactics that corporate America uses to gain, keep, and utilize the attention of young people's minds, okay? It is extremely important to understand that the way we can attain that attention is do a couple of things. First of all, we need to create, and it's extremely important, we need to create windows of anticipation, and inside those windows of anticipation, then we can deliver teaching, counseling, and training. But without gaining, keeping, and utilizing attention, we do ourselves and the individuals an extreme disservice, and it's extremely important. We need to do that. We need to understand that these windows of anticipation not only work for the client, but we can use these windows of anticipation for the support system, okay? And when I say support system, I want to be clear, we're talking about sometime relatives. It's an opportunity for us to create mentorships, which is what we do with Second Starts. We go to that person's personal network, and we create mentorships. People who aren't necessarily personally involved, okay? And we get them involved in a forward-leaning manner. In other words, the new mentors and the new support network is not built to deal with the problems. They're built to deal with the forward-leaning movement. We've got practitioners, we've got therapists, we've got physicians, we've got a lot of you professionals to deal with the current problems, the current issues. What we need to do is create a forward-leaning mechanism that makes all that possible and allows all that to be put to use and creates an environment and a life management system and a system in itself to use and utilize that and get the most out of everything. Most of this is about creating a situation that gives more power to everything that we are already doing. That is the key. If I don't get anything else through today, that's the key. We must make a system that creates a forward-leaning impetus. And that's most important. So what we want to do is leverage that power of support, leverage that power of anticipation windows, okay? And leverage everything we can. And with that, we create a life management system. I'll go a little bit into what the life management system is, but remember, the most important thing, we don't get anything through. We need to do 3 things simultaneously, okay? And those are important. And these 3 things, I want to go over them again. Therapeutic comprehension, support network, and client transformation. Very important. With this system that we are going to put in place, there are 7 principles. I want to briefly go over them because time is of the essence here. We're already in a half an hour, and I know you guys are busy. This system works in 7 principles of 4 major pillars of delivery, okay? Principle number 1, the principle of direction. There's nothing more important. I want to give that in an analogy. Anything that you do, especially physically or in sports, or anything you do, you don't do it as well when you are concentrating, looking off to the side, looking behind you, looking in the past. And I understand that a lot of those things are necessary with practitioner treatment. And again, to beat this theme into the ground, we don't need or want practitioners to do anything different than they're doing. What we need to do is pull it and glue it together and provide a runway for it to run more smoothly. So direction is the most important thing. Keeping focus forward, keeping goals, attainable goals forward, and not just paper goals, daily, multiple daily goals. A leverage-based management system has multiple contacts during the day. Its very basic principle essence is start the day, segment the day, finish the day, and evaluate and prepare for the next day. And that's the system that we install. It creates an organic recovery. There's no dogmatic views about how to get that done. The most important thing is to create the time, focus, and attention periods during that time, okay? Your teaching and your help will help mold how that day is filled. What we want to do is create that impetus in that life management system. Secondly, customize. It's got to be customized. And the way you do that is through interview, through watching and listening, and understanding that the system has to be delivered in the flow of that individual's life. Okay, and that is something that we can do through interview and through creating those windows. Leverage support. As we said before, there's nothing stronger than the support network, bar none. If someone wants to argue, that's fine, but the support network, can it be detrimental? Yes. Can it be harnessed and used for good and have some of those detriments reduced by application? Most definitely so. Should the support network be alive? Should it be growing? Most definitely. And that is so important. A lot of times we on the practitioner level and the system level does not do that. It has to be realized, reimagined, rebuilt, and it needs to be turned into a living, growing, usable thing. Fourth, detrimental procrastination. What's most important, and this is something the term that Second Starts came up with, proud to say, what's most important is that it's not so much dwelling on what you did, but what you are going to do. You do not want to miss certain activities, certain thought processes, okay, that are necessary in order to build that strong foundational muscle. Those should not be missed. So a leverage-based tapered life management system makes sure that those are not missed, okay? Fourth one is immediate course correction. And this is maybe another one of the most important ones in the management system. The biggest problem that any information or counseling-based system has is that information is given, there's time in between, and you come back and say, well, what happened? And by the time you come back, or by the time it's revisited, the relapse, the reoccurring of certain unwanted situations has already occurred. A system, a leverage-based tapered life management system, does not allow any faults in the system to occur without being immediately addressed and turned in. And this system not only goes for the client, but also the support network who are involved in this leverage-based management system. It's an interactive system that works with the support people and the client at the same time. And both of those are immediate course corrections. Both groups need to do and perform in certain manners that gives the other part of the group the foundation to believe that they are working as a team. That is so much important that we have the client and the support network believing that they are a comprehensive team. That's most important. Secondly, frequency, consistency, and variation. Something else that is basically Second Starts creation. And basically it goes this. Frequency is the time between the grasping of a particular thought and how long it takes for it to wane, and the gravity of the life situation brings you away from that realization. In other words, if I tell a person, listen, you shouldn't do X, Y, or Z. You shouldn't smoke marijuana, for example. Okay. There is a time between when you're sitting there with a younger individual who they begin to believe you and understand what you're talking about. A lot of times the treatment that you give and the counseling that you give as practitioners is actually effective for a certain amount of time. And that certain amount of time basically goes to what is the gravity of distractions that brings that individual's mind back to where he was before, and now everything you said means less and less. That is the frequency. What is that time? We work with the frequency in a tapered life management system to reduce that time and build that muscle slowly until they strength against distraction and the gravity of situation turns. So that is frequency. Consistent variation is how is the information delivered? There has to be some consistency to the deliverance, but it should be varied. The information given should be varied as far as pace, as far as content, even as far as the visuals. When you're working with a tapered life management system, you move from audio presentation to written presentation to question and answer presentation, and you move back and forth currently. The anticipation, once as much variation as we can apply, creates more anticipation. The less varied, you reduce anticipation. The whole business of a tapered life management system is to create anticipation windows. And this is sort of the technical part about it. And even though it's a lot of chemicals, we don't do any actual, we're not trying to take the practitioner's situation, but we're finding different ways to deliver this information, okay? And the last one is lifelong learning. And this is something that we work with from the very beginning toward the end of the program, because lifelong learning is the fuel that will allow this entire system to become sustainable. And the most important thing that we are looking for is sustainability. And that's the most important thing. So I don't have the schematic here, and I won't do that. And I'll be doing that probably in next week or the week after. So look for some invitations. And we're going to be talking about this delivery schematic of a tapered, leverage-based tapered life management system. I want to be clear that my goal in this situation is a few things. One, I want to deliver a different train of thought for frontline practitioners, something that you can initiate. This is something that we can develop as a system that helps a family to understand in a different way to approach these long-term recovery situations, that goes along with and bolsters and adds to what the practitioners are doing. Not a replacement, but an additive that strengthens the situation. And we want them to understand that. We also, as a service, provide done-for-you situations where we go in with the family, we create the network, we redo the network, we reimagine their personal network, we create an accountability system that is leverage-based, that works extremely well, and it's a done-for-you situation. We also provide that, and this, not to be shy, but these presentations are basically let practitioners know that we want to be a referral option, because we think that we can help make what you do stronger. We give it more strength, because as I know I experienced, I know you experienced, compassion fatigue is real. And when you're ice skating uphill all the time, you need all the help you can get. My name is Richard Jones, and you can reach me at secondstarts.com. That's the number 2ndstarts.com. That is the email that's up there, richardjones@secondstarts.com. We have a website. It basically is geared, the website is geared to family members and not so much practitioners. But there is a situation where if you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us by email there, or you can reach us on that website. And I'm going to be reaching out more and more on LinkedIn, trying to get practitioners to start to understand and see what we can do with this. Before we go, I want to talk about the 4 major pillars of delivery, which is extremely important. The first major pillar of delivery, and why we are creating these anticipation windows. First thing we want to do is we want to bolster and create a sense of agency and self-ownership, mutating to society agency. It's a very particular reason why we do it that way. We understand that any individual who finds themselves, any young individual who finds themselves in the situation we're talking about, where they're in need of long-term recovery, there's 3 things they don't have. First, or 3 things they need to work on, needs to be bolstered. That self-agency and ownership, mutating to societal agency. Secondly, a system of organizing and planning and building. We only need extremely simple, sustainable system, and tapered life management that's what it's all about. It builds a very simple and sustainable way to create a planning, organization, and building system for their lives, and then plug and play what goes on involved in that. We've done people where they have certain particular goals. We help them reach goals. Sometimes somewhere in programs, we can install any treatment or any management system or anything you want inside of this system. The system is basically a attention-getting Trojan horse, if you might. Okay. Third is preparatory phase. And in my experience in situations like this, there is no way you get through this without the preparation phase. And the preparation phase is when an individual learns to use these systems by second nature. They cannot be in a teaching situation and make this work. They cannot be in a counseling situation and make this work. Teaching and counseling are definitely an ongoing therapy. These things that you do, practitioners do, are ongoing. What Tapered Life Management is a system to carry those further. So the preparatory phase prepares them to continue to sustain this approach and therefore better utilize the help that you as practitioners are giving. And I think that's very important. The fourth major pillar is not something that we deliver necessarily to groups and families. This only is for individuals families that we are actually working with. And this fourth pillar is something that's very near and dear to me. I always said if and when I came up with this type of system to help people, it wouldn't be financially driven. And in this semi-retirement stage of my life, I don't have to do that. But if in fact there is a fiduciary relationship, we would make sure that nothing would happen that would not be easily financially explained. And let me explain what I mean by that. In other words, when we enter with a family to start this leverage-based tapered life management system, the initiation and the production and the direction is all given first. Once that is given and that is understood by the family, and we reach that certain point, then if it is working for the family and they felt as though by that time, they have gotten what we would call their money's worth and they feel satisfied with what is going on, then we take a partial payment of the program. We move to the next phase where we deliver another stack of content. And when we get to that stack, we say to the family, have you received more value than we're asking for as far as compensation? Are you completely satisfied? We wanted to make sure that no money was thrown away. The system, I don't want to tear it down, but a lot of times people are getting thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And it's up to the family or it's up to you whether you got your treatment or not. I work part-time in rehabilitation and insurances, and people are paying out thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars for 28 days worth of treatment, and the individual goes back and there is no change whatsoever. Well, we blame it on the individual. Well, they weren't ready for change. They weren't ready. It didn't work. They relapsed. It's part of the addition. Second starts and tapered life management does not work that way. We work up until a certain point, and we understand that is baked in, and that is the family understands. We feel like we've got the value. We move on. We don't accept a one-time payment for the whole program. Payment must be done in intervals, and the reason why that is because we want to make absolutely sure that family feels as though they have gotten everything that they deserve to get. Okay? There's no refunds. We don't do refunds because we don't need to. We make extremely clear. Have you gotten the value? If you do not get the value, the program stops. If someone in this number 5 of our 7 principles, immediate course correction, if there is a problem in delivery, if there's a problem in acceptance, if there's a problem in involvement, even from the client or the support network, and someone doesn't come in at the proper time interval, the program stops. We don't move on. We don't brush anything to the side at all. Everybody comes. This is an effort that we all work together. Second starts, the client and the support network. We all work together. We pull together. And when one falls, we stop, pick them up. No man left behind. No man left behind. So our goal is a no man left behind approach. And this approach bolsters what you as practitioners are doing. So we're going to stop right there. And remember, Richard Jones at secondstarts.com is take a look at what we're doing and try to, I hope anybody was has any questions, please be free to email me. And I love to talk about it. I can talk about it for days. But I think that it's an effect that I'm trying to get out there, and it's a message that I'm trying to get, especially practitioners. We do not and will not market this to individual families. That's not what we want to do. We really would prefer a referral-based system because we want to, when we come in, we want to understand where the family is at and understand that there is a real problem. This is a situation where we are making necessary life transformations. The name of our podcast is Essential Change, the podcast. And when you look up us on the internet for second storage, you can type in essential change, because these are changes that we feel are essential to life, necessary changes, a different way to view and accept and work in the world. And once we change that view and make that transformation, we make all other treatments and all other things much easier. So in saying that, we want to sign off. We'll see you in a couple weeks for another presentation, and I hope we get some more of you to come through. And thank you very much.